All right, let's get into our next discussion now. The Senate and House of Representatives Committee on Electoral Matters has adopted President Muhammadu Buhari's request for a virement of 143 billion naira from the 2018 budget for INEC.
And the legislators took the decision at the end of an executive session which lasted about 40 minutes. Addressing newsmen at the end of the closed-door meeting, Chairman Senate Committee on Electoral Matters, Suleiman Nassif, announced the resolve of the committee to have INEC come before it and present a fresh request to that effect. The committee expects INEC to make the presentation on Tuesday. But, of course, the commission implored the committee to approve the two sums in the 2018 budget, since it is most unlikely the 2019 budget will be ready before February, when elections will hold.
Has deliberated the position to adopt the 143 billion as presented by Mr. President. And at this point in time, it is also the wish of this committee that INEC represent their budget of 143 as requested by Mr. President. So therefore, INEC has an opportunity to reprioritize, and this committee will be ready.
Okay, INEC should represent its budget of 143 billion naira as presented by the president, so there can be harmony. Well, we'll certainly have to understand that with a lawyer in the house, Ahmed Abbas, in the studio with us. Ahmed, good morning.
Good morning.
It's nice to have you join us. All right. Nigerians seem to be, because this has not really happened so many times for Nigerians to know that there has been precedents. The National Assembly is on recess, and then the committees are coming together to approve the budget. But one way or the other, the budget by INEC and the budget by the president as presented were different. And now there has to be a harmony one way or the other. Make us understand when a budget has been approved and then it has to be represented by INEC.
I think the issues are very straightforward.
Okay.
Budgets, I mean, it's like a tradition. It's like what you intend to do. Budgets are expectations of what you intend to do. And once it has been approved, it becomes a law. But however, if there is need for variation, it's like you projected that you're going to spend 100 billion naira for a particular subject matter, and along the line, like there has been increase in party registration, exactly. So that's going to call for probably incurring more additional cost and things like that, and there's need for you to probably vary what has been approved before. Since you can't spend money and the presidency cannot just add to what has been approved before, there will be need for them to bring it before the National Assembly and explain. That's why the committee is saying the INEC should bring their presentation and probably defend it, because usually you are supposed to make it defend your proposals. That this is the reason why there is a difference between what was in the 2018 budget and what we are proposing for the 2019. Seeing that this budget is for 2018, and there's every likelihood that another budget may not be presented in the nearest future for 2019. And the election is 2019. So how do we make provision? Early 19, for that matter, because 2018 budget is just being passed in how many years down the line? The election of 2019 is in February.
Exactly.
So the INEC must have projected that, well, in order for us not to run into a problem, why don't we, bring an additional budget so that they can be approved holistically, and we begin to spend from 2018 across 2019. But because it's actually a peculiar circumstance.
Yes, absolutely, very peculiar indeed. This truly is a dilemma for INEC. Are we expecting some kind of crisis situation for INEC ahead of the 2019 elections?
Well, I do not foresee that? Yes, once the National Assembly see they are on the same page with INEC, because what they are trying to do now is just to ensure we do not find ourselves in crisis. There will be crisis if the budget is not approved And INEC goes into 2019 election with its hands empty. We can't employ ad hoc staff. We can't procure papers, ballot papers. We can't print ballot papers. Then that would be crisis. But now, I think I should say we are still on course.
Still safe.
Still on course.
But looking at it from in the first place, we all know, Nigerians know, the executive know, INEC knows that there's going to be election early 2019. And one was expecting, or one would expect that INEC budget would have been infused or factored into the 2018 budget, and that didn't happen. And we had this back and forth. Now, what does that tell about the way we look into the future and making proper plans for all of this?
If you interrogate every aspect of our lives, every aspect of our national life, you would see this constant signature that we do not plan. We simply get to the bridge and be asking ourselves, how do we cross?
How do we cross?
We do not anticipate in every facet. Remember, as far back as between 1979 and 1983, Alhaji Lateef Jakonde in Lagos brought out the issue of even number and odd number in trying to solve the traffic situation in Lagos. How many years down the line, there is no scientific approach to resolving traffic? How many years down the line? Because we do not project, we do not plan ahead. So ordinarily, we shouldn't be having this problems if we have a holistic planning approach. If we knew election was going to hold in 2019. So from the beginning of 2018, we would have factored in everything required.
If not even much earlier.
Even not much earlier.
Okay, now you have an unfortunate situation where this whole INEC budget is being politicized. You have the APC, on the one hand saying, look, this is what we need. We need the 189 billion, while the PDP is saying, no, you go with the 143 billion, and then we can, begin to look at other issues of environment, in the 2019 budget and all of that to meet the rest of it. Should funding of INEC be politicized in the first place, as we're having? And you wonder what kind of impact this would have on the final outcome of the 2019 election.
Issues of election, I think, should be addressed and looked upon as a very serious matter and shouldn't be politicized at all. However, I think addressed and looked upon as a very serious matter and shouldn't be politicized at all. However, I think I also want to blame managers of our affairs, because prior to the presentation, there ought to have been consultations along the line. There should be harmonization even prior to its preparation between the executive and the legislative arm. They would have looked at it probably in the course of prior to, having input, stakeholders input. In the preparation of a budget like this, INEC should have called stakeholders meeting and give them an insider understanding of the challenges and what they intend to do. And I'm sure that if they had carried everybody along, there won't be this dispute of, we are presenting a budget of 180 something. No, we are not going to approve this and things like that. It's just a question of how you manage your relationship with your stakeholders. Everybody is important. You see, in governance, there must be, and you must run an inclusive system. Stakeholders constantly carry. Reason why you constantly have bottlenecks of mistrust and all the rest of them is because people just believe, I don't understand how you are doing this thing. What do you need this money for? I need it to be broken down. If you have their input, you won't be having problem when you approve, because they are part and parcel of the decision. They were aware of all the sub-items that were part and parcel of the budget. So it's a function of carrying people along. We run a secretive, very closed system in this part of, we mystify governance. We personalize it as if it's our personal destiny, and you expect the other stakeholder, I present anything to you, just sign. Hook, line, and sinker.
Don't ask questions.
It does not ask questions. It doesn't work that way. We must run an open, transparent, honest, all stakeholders. Look, INEC is basically a supervisor. You are not the one that is going to print, the ballot papers. There are organizations that you are going to award the contract to. We must have their input. We must have alternative. You can't just say, oh, this organization is going to print it at 1 billion. We should know whether we can print it for less. We should have options. Even a member of the committee, stakeholder, could say, no, this ballot papers that you want to print at 1 billion, and I can tell you can get better quality at 800 million naira. So you must give and take. You can't just assume, I know it all. When you run that kind of transparent, open administration, it becomes very easy for you to scale through whatever you are doing. That's lobbying. You need to lobby people. You don't just dump as if they are just rubber stamp and things like that. It's about the philosophy of governance. Once you believe in open, transparent government, and you bring in your stakeholders, they will always have confidence and trust in you.
All right. Now, seeing it from the window of the fact that it seemed like if this 143 billion is adopted eventually, and that goes, it looks like a slash in the original budget that INEC submitted. Do you foresee INEC having issues with the amounts or the adequacy of the funds for the election?
Well, it's neither here nor there, in the sense that we didn't know how that original figure was actually computed.
Arrived at, okay.
Taking into cognizance the reality of our experience over the years, that we have over-bloated procurement system and procedure.
And don't forget, why the reps actually pushed this forward, why they did not approve the sum in the first place. They had raised issues of duplication of some of the items that had already been budgeted for. They raised such issues.
You know, like I said, we are all Nigerians, and if you are a student of Nigerian history, you know we run one of the most expensive procurement procedure system and cost in the whole world, because we're told that a kilometer of road costs almost 5 times in Nigeria.
Anywhere else in the world.
Anywhere in the world. So our procurement process, sometimes only God will help us. So it's possible that maybe the budgets had been overinflated. And at the same time, if in tandem with the corruption drive of this government, that actually there's prudence in that budget, I hope INEC will not come back to say, well, the money you approved, the budget, is not sufficient for the work. But I'm sure, in all honesty, that if we get to that point, or if INEC is able to explain with facts and figure,
that they can get what they want.
That they can get what they want.
But is it time? Look, INEC has always conducted elections the same way over the years, whether under Yakubu or all the electoral umpires that we've had down the line, Maurice Wu, you name it. Is it time for INEC to begin to look at other ways? You know, you talked about a scientific way of solving age-old problems, age-long problems.
Absolutely.
Is it time for us to begin to look in other ways that will, cost us less, be more efficient, more effective,
Yeah. The honest truth is that on various platforms, people had suggested means. You see, sometimes when we get this mind-boggling figure, 190 billion naira, we need 300 billion, we need 70 billion, we need all these. I used to wonder that we keep repeating virtually anytime we are going into an election. It's like a wholesale approach every year. There is no fixed cost that we have actually incurred in the time past that could suffice. We keep reproducing virtually everything. And I think we should modernize. We should adopt better ways. Even in legal practice, for example, you are executing probably a deed of assignment for illiterates who can sign their signature. You sign, for literate persons, you sign your signature. In that same document, you have what they call an illiterate jurat. In case you are dealing with and somebody who is not educated, they made provision for how the person will execute similar document that will still be valid before the law. We have educated people that can vote from their phone. Why don't we adopt that approach? I mean, connect electronic voting. So that from the comfort
but of course,
INEC
has said that electronic voting is not fail-safe.
You have BVN these days that once your BVN is punched into any bank account,
anywhere
you have a bank account, everything just line up.
Exactly.
So technology can actually help them to reduce cost, simplify the process. Because look, the essence of governance is simplifying processes and procedure, making people to maximize opportunities, use less energy to get more result. That is what creative leadership is all about. You constantly ask, how can we simplify the work of INEC? Can we also introduce early election through voting? Open an election 1 month before the general election, so that from the comfort of my house or a polling booth, any day I like, I can walk into a polling booth and vote electronically. It will be counting until the day fits. By the time you get to that day, if it is about 50, 70 million people that we're expecting, and then the election is open a month before, it's possible for almost about 50 to 60, 70%.
Which is what obtains in the US.
That is what I'm saying. We are just too far behind civilization, and we must be in a hurry to connect, to plug into civilization. We do not need to invent these things any longer. That's why we say it's not rocket science. We just need to borrow and adapt.
All right. As INEC prepares for the election in its own way, certainly everyone is also preparing one way or the other, and all the what they call stakeholders are also preparing. But let us look at the other very major stakeholder, which are the political parties. From what you are assessing and what you are seeing right now, are the political parties really getting themselves ready for this election the way it's supposed to be in the eye of Nigerians?
Not at all, from my own take. Because if you see what transpired in the by-election in Rivers State of recent, you could see the spirit of desperation. I would seem not to have learnt anything. And the reason is not far-fetched. The stakes are too high. The benefit attached to these offices are too high. And so the political parties are desperate. We ought to be changing the mode of campaign. In the 2 last elections, you discover that it wasn't issue-driven. It wasn't issue-driven. I don't know whether you saw the other one of I'm sorry to say, the Adeleke that went viral, where a political, a candidate was telling the people, it's about money. Why do you need to give people small money? That his own philosophy is you give it to them, give them heavy-duty money. We are not talking about how do we bail our people out of poverty. 400 million people in China, within how many years, were massively lifted up out of poverty. One day I came to the conclusion, I said, look, the greatest invention of man is not the aircraft. The greatest invention of man is the machinery called government. It is the biggest man-made machine for pulling people
out of poverty,
hauling people out of poverty, if creatively deployed. Our parties should rather be telling Nigerians how they intend to add value to their life, translate them from this miserable, poor, unemployed circumstances that we have found ourselves. They should be selling. Most of them are actually depending on using money. After all, the 2 parties did it in Ekiti State. They bought votes.
Exactly.
And to me, I say it, those parties and their main officers who subscribe in this 24th century to buying of votes are emotionally and psychologically sick. Yeah, they are. You can be sick without knowing you are sick, man. You can. That's why people drop dead.
Will you at least have some body pain? Will you have headache and all of that?
People drop dead without knowing.
That's true.
There was something wrong they didn't know.
They didn't
and
know.
we must tell ourselves that when educated men and women could subscribe to the buying of votes, UPN didn't do it. The Obafemi Awolowo didn't buy vote. 4 cardinal programs, free education, free health, was what they used in persuading the people.
They campaign
on programs. That is what obtained in civilized climate. You tell the people, these are my programs, these are my policies, how I intend to add value tremendously to your life. But when we sit down in this 21st century and I see PDP and APC buying votes, look, I'm telling you honestly, quote me anytime, any day. You can be sick emotionally and psychologically without knowing. It is sickening. Because we are a ridicule. The black man is becoming an eyesore. Where do you see this kind of politics being played? In which part of the world will you see people buying vote? We must call a spade, because what this country needs It's men and women to rise up, look at the authorities and men in powers and tell them the reality.
Where will
we
those
are
men?
ashamed.
Where will those men and women emanate from?
Within the society.
Have we as a people decided that we don't want this kind of governance? We don't want vote buying,
Yes.
and all the rest of the ills of society that plague us.
There are millions of people all across Nigeria that don't believe in this useless system that they are running. I will say it authoritatively. Any party that subscribes to the buying of vote, the entire structure is sick. When I say sick, they are psychologically sick.
My point is, are the parties themselves not a product of society? The kind of society that we have unfortunately evolved into?
No.
That we have become?
No.
Okay.
It is just that, what Margaret Thatcher said. She said, I am involved in politics because of the contention between good and evil. But I am confident that good will always triumph over evil. What has happened over the years is that men of good conscience, what does it take for evil to thrive in the society? It's for men of good conscience to simply keep quiet. They've been too complacent. They've been too docile. They've accepted the norm. The system is compelling everybody to believe. All they need is simply to stand up. Listen to what Barack Obama said. He said, if one voice can change a room, he said that voice can change an entire city. If that voice can change the city, he said it can change a state. He said, if it can change a state, it can change a nation. He said, and if it can change a nation, it can change the entire. Most history makers were just lone voices who did not just believe in the norm and spoke out against it. Nelson Mandela was a single man who single-handedly one day, 27 years, stood for one conviction. Martin Luther King Jr. was just one single man. Rosa Parks was a 15-year-old lady that spoke against an anomaly in the society. It takes just one person harnessing our collective expectations.
So there is something fundamentally wrong then when you hear the average Nigerian on the streets, on platforms like this say, government needs to do this, government needs to do that. Which means we have handed our lives over to government and not looked at the man in the mirror to say, I am actually the agent of change. That is where the problem obviously lies.
Ask an average Nigerians who wants to contest an election. Let me say this. I will never, if I intend to contest any election, I will never subscribe to buying a vote. And if a party actually gives me their ticket and the leadership believes in buying votes, I will throw their ticket at them and walk away. Rather than contesting an election on the platform of a party that subscribes to buying a vote,
All right.
I will rather not contest that election.
All
That's
right.
the only way you can stand for what is right.
Okay, we have to leave it here now because time is against us. We must thank you, Ahmed Abbas, for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.